Hi there everyone, Janelle here. I am back with another informative video for you. So if you're not familiar with who I am, again, my name is Janelle. I write a lifestyle blog at janelle.com, which is for the mystical millennial homemakers and hustlers out there. I do that by day, and by night I am an astrologer for purpose-driven business women, and I help them through intuitive natal chart readings where I help them to decipher exactly why they're here, what they're meant to do, and how they're meant to do it according to the energies in their chart. That way they can follow their life path, fulfill their destiny, and know exactly what their purpose is. Like, who doesn't want to know that, right? So today I want to talk to you about retrogrades, because we are always hearing about retrogrades, and as an astrologer I'm always getting questions about retrogrades, mostly Mercury retrograde, because that tends to be the most popular one. But honestly, every planet retrogrades at some point or another. Mercury just happens to be the one that most people know, but truth is, at any given time, there is a planet retrograding. I basically want to explain to you what a retrograde is and what it means when each planet is in retrograde. That way, whenever you hear anyone throwing out these different retrogrades happening, you'll have a basic understanding of what's happening. So first things first, what's a retrograde? So a retrograde is when a specific planet appears to be going backwards. It's appearing to be orbiting backwards. It's not actually, it's more of an illusion, but during the periods where that is happening, whatever planet that is retrograding or appearing to move in a way that it's not typically moving around, it shakes up the energy of that particular planet. So we'll start with Mercury, because again, that's the one everyone knows, right? So Mercury is our planet of communication, also rules tech. It's also our planet of the mind. So when Mercury is retrograding, when Mercury is kind of off its course, that is when we find ourselves not being able to think correctly. A lot of times our tech crashes, and you know, that's why people will advise you to back up your files, whatever it is that you use. Like, make sure that everything is backed up and working correctly. That way, just in case something happens and Mercury retrograde hits, you'll be okay and you won't completely lose it. But there's also a lot of arguments that happen during this time. People just not being able to understand each other in a way that they normally would, because again, your planet that rules your mind is a little shaky, and so therefore you are too. When Venus retrogrades, because it's our planet of love, it's going to highlight a lot of the, how do I say this? A lot of the weak links in your relationship, if you have any. So if there's anything that really needs to be fixed, if there's anything that you have been shoving down there and you haven't been wanting to deal with, it's all going to come up during Venus retrograde. So Venus retrograde oftentimes helps us to figure out if we're with the right person, and if we're not with the right person, there tends to be a lot of breakups during this time, because everything is being shed on your relationship and you're really able to see what it really is. And there's Mars, which is our planet of energy and assertiveness. So when Mars is retrograding, a lot of times we tend to feel more sluggish. We're not able to move as quickly as we would normally be able to. This really affects my Aries people, because Aries is ruled by Mars, and Aries people like to go fast. We don't like to think. We get the idea. We go, we drive fast, we talk fast, we do everything fast. So when our ruling planet is retrograding, we are forced to slow down. Not just Aries people, everyone, but you know, Aries people feel it the most. Mars also rules the libido. So during Mars retrograde, you either go crazy wanting to hump anything moving, or you completely slow down and you just don't want to be touched at all. It can go either way. During Mars retrogrades, there are no in between. Jupiter, which is our planet of luck, when that's retrograding, a lot of times we end up picking up something that we didn't finish, whether it's, you know, maybe you started a degree a few years ago and you just never finished it. A lot of times under Jupiter's influence, you'll want to go ahead and just wrap that up. We tend to do a lot of traveling around that time as well. And if you had a business idea that you kind of sort of tried a few years ago but not really, during Jupiter retrogrades, we often find ourselves going back to those ideas, revisiting them, and being able to put the life into it that's needed to really push it forward. Then there's Saturn retrograde. And Saturn is like a really strict dad, right? It's our planet of limitation. When Saturn is retrograding, it will actually bring up issues that you have with your dad, if you have any. So a lot of karmic things also come up during Saturn retrograde, because Saturn also rules karma. Interesting time, not my personal favorite, but hey. Then there is Uranus, which is our planet of evolution and revolution. So whenever Uranus is in retrograde, there's usually a lot going on politically, because people are basically like, you know, rising up against tradition. A lot of things can change whenever Uranus is retrograding. It can also result in you removing people from your life who are really toxic. Neptune is our planet that's going to help out with our creativity. For those of us who are spiritually gifted, this really helps out with like our different clairs and stuff like that. A lot of spiritual stuff is represented by Neptune. We can often find ourselves questioning our spiritual or religious beliefs. Our intuition tends to strengthen during this time. Neptune retrograde usually brings that to light, so there's a lot of inner work that tends to be triggered as a result of Neptune retrograding. Pluto retrograde can actually be, or not can actually, Pluto retrograde is typically like the most mystical of the retrogrades. It really represents some really deep parts of our subconscious. So oftentimes during Pluto retrogrades, we end up exploring and working through our, what people like to call our shadow side. On a whole, retrogrades are really here to make us stop for a moment and do some reflection on the different areas that each planet represents, so that we can make sure that we are moving accordingly. Oftentimes people are just moving through life without really checking in, and then it's like one day you wake up and you're like, how did I get here? What decisions did I make to get to where I am today, or to not be where I desire to be? But when you work with the retrogrades and you harness the energy of each retrograde, because you are aware of what each planet in retrograde means, it can really help you to do that reflection that is necessary for the next part of your evolution. So do not fear retrogrades. I know there's so much like, you know, fear around retrogrades, and oh my god, this is going to happen and bad things are going to happen. People associate bad things with retrogrades, but it's not always bad. It's just, you know, always things that are part of the journey. So don't fear them. Don't put your life on hold, because as I mentioned earlier, there's a planet in retrograde at any given time. So there's always some planet retrograding any day of the week, any time of the year. There's something in retrograde. So don't fear them. Don't put your life on hold. Just figure out what planet is retrograding at one time and what that retrograde represents, so that you can do the inner work necessary to work with that energy again. I can't stress that enough. I'm always talking about working with the energies, not against it. So I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope that you've learned something new. And whatever questions you have about retrogrades, if there are any retrogrades in particular that you'd like to discuss, we can go ahead and do so in the comments. I would love to assist you with any questions that you have. So thank you again for watching. Again, my name is Janelle, and I really appreciate you tuning in today. Have a blessed day. Love you all so much. Bye.